Welcome everyone to Microsoft 365 UK User Group. This is our September edition, and thank you for taking your time out to be here with us. And so I'm one of the organizers here for the Microsoft 365 UK User Group. And so today we've got some great sessions with Peter Rising and Laura Graham-Brown. And so generally we do this every month, middle of the month on Wednesdays, 2-hour session with a break in between. So, for those of you who are new to the Microsoft 365 UK user group, welcome to this group. And so, I'd like to thank our speakers, first of all, for giving up their time and effort to put their presentations together. So that they can share their knowledge, their experiences in the field that they do. So Peter will be talking about the Microsoft information protection, the evolution of it, and also the recent advancements. And so really looking forward to that session. And then we have, after the break, session with Laura Graham-Brown, which is on the Power Apps, Power BI. So really kind of, been the space of the developing applications and reports on a Power Platform. So we'll be looking at that as well from Laura. So that's another great session. Looking forward to it. So enjoy the sessions today. And I've just got a few kind of updates around things on the group. But first of all, for those who are not aware or who don't know me, I'm Chirag Patel. I organize this user group, and also I'm a speaker and speak at various community events. For a living, I work as a Microsoft 365 consultant, been in the space for about 20 odd years, started my journey with SQL Server, Sharepoint, and then around 2012 kind of had my first taste of the BPOS or back then the evolution of Office 365, and here we are. So kind of, I wouldn't say as much as people will, there's obviously experts around in this field, and that's great, but I just find with the pace of change of technologies, I'm still learning even today. So, those are my details. techchirag.com is pretty much where my blog and all the events info that lives. So feel free to contact me, or if I can help you in any ways. Generally tweet and on LinkedIn updates all the articles and the updates from Microsoft in general, and also from the wider community. So those are my details there. So feel free to take a look, and obviously any like I said, any questions, then just kind of get to myself. We have a couple of sessions, events planned as well for the coming next couple of months. So we have Joanne Klein and also Leslie Crook, who will be doing sessions on obviously on protecting the teamwork as well as the adoption session. And then we have on the 18th of November sessions from Tony Pohl from Austria, and then we got Ben Howard as well. So we got sessions there on Power Apps as well as project on the web and everything around the Microsoft project world. So feel free to head over to those links. meetup.com/M365UK is our meetup site. All the updates, the links to the slides, videos, which we have a YouTube channel for this as well. So you can catch all those recordings, and this is our 4th event. So we have done 3 events where the session slides and videos have been made available. So in case if you've missed those, then do take a look at those as well. Just to kind of give a shout out to the community as well. In addition to this, and being the conference season that we're in, with Microsoft Ignite happening next week, but I'm also speaking at a few community events. Last week was obviously Teams Day, the tour, but obviously this weekend we have another SharePoint Saturday, or it's now called M365 Saturday in India. So I'll be speaking there, as well as Teams Day online in the US end of this month. And also we got the great Teams Fest event happening next month as well. So these are all free community events, lots and lots of sessions I'm definitely going to tune into some of those sessions. And just wanted to say big thanks to the organizers there who are bringing these events to us. So, and it's my honor as well to be able to speak at those events as well. So hopefully I'll catch you online at some of these events as well. So all the links to the registration are on my techchirag.com site. So do take a look and register from there as well. Okay, so kind of just we just kind of get straight into the session really. And Peter and I, we've known each other for quite some time now, and Peter has been in the IT space for many years. And obviously his speciality is obviously in security and compliance, even though he's obviously delving spaces around teams and lists and obviously the evolving landscape of Microsoft 365. He also recently published his book as well on the exam guides, but I won't steal much of his intro, and I'll probably just straight hand it over to him and really kind of for him to share his knowledge and session around the Microsoft information protection. So with that, I would like to hand over to Peter. Peter, it's over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Chirag. Good afternoon, everybody. I will share my slides and hopefully you will have those in a moment.
Yeah, we'll just...
Do we have those, Chirag?
No, if you just, I can't see your desktop. If you try again, please. If you just share your desktop.
And how about now?
Yes, that's looking good. So yeah, go for it. Over to you.
Fantastic. So yes, welcome everybody. My name is Peter Rising. I'm a senior technical consultant working pretty much exclusively in the Microsoft 365 space. And this afternoon I have the honor and privilege to speak to you about the evolution of Microsoft information protection, which has a very punchy subtitle of From Information Rights Management to Sensitivity Labeling. So before we get going, just a little bit of Chirag could not have built me up better there, so thank you very much for that indeed. But a quick little about me slide of where you can find me on social media and various other places. So I am on Twitter at M365Rising. You can also find me at LinkedIn. And I spend a lot of my time on the Microsoft tech community, where you can find me trying to help out our wonderful community members with all sorts of interesting questions. And also, as Chirag mentioned, I recently published my first book, which was a very much a lifetime goal for me, which was Microsoft 365 Security Administration MS500 Exam Guide. And more recently, I also have the very amazing honor of being a writer at the wonderful practical365.com site. So you can check out some of my recent articles there as well. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about information protection within Microsoft 365. So what is Microsoft information protection? And at the moment, if you Google it and get to Microsoft's page on the subject, you will come to their page with this slide, exactly this slide, which I took from the site. And it shows you that information protection in its current format is a collection of solutions which make up Microsoft information protection. So what we have is Azure information protection, Microsoft information protection, Microsoft Cloud App Security, and Windows information protection. And we will touch on all of these as we go through the slides in this afternoon in the next few minutes. So a brief history of information protection for you, and where it all started was with information rights management, which is a feature that is natively available to this day within Office 365 enterprise plans. So you can get access to rights management from your Office 365 E3 plans and so on and so forth. And what this enables you to do is to protect the content that you are storing within your Microsoft 365 environment in places like SharePoint Online, document libraries and sites, and well, Teams as well, obviously, document libraries, and OneDrive for Business. And it enables you to do things such as control what the recipients of that data can and can't do. So if you're sharing that information with other parties outside of your tenant, or even within, you can control exactly what they can and can't do. And that consists of things such as preventing the ability to download the file and save a local copy, prevent the ability to copy and paste content from the file, and control how long they have access to the file. You can put an expiry date on it, and even things like preventing the recipient of that sharing from taking a screenshot. That is something that is only, to my knowledge anyways, available in Windows platforms, and no longer available, not yet, as far as I'm aware, available in the Mac world. So this was really the beginnings in the Microsoft 365 arena of this sort of technology, enabling protection of content. And then that evolved into the introduction a few years ago now of Azure Information Protection, AIP, which is probably what people still refer to this whole thing as more than anything else. It's become very, very sticky, and that when you talk about all of the technologies that we're talking about here, things like rights management, things like sensitivity labeling, unified labeling, people tend to still call it Azure Information Protection. I have customers come to me saying we need to deploy AIP, and it's potentially not accurate anymore, but it's one of those names that tends to stick, a bit like a brand name like sellotape instead of sticky tape. Other brands are available. But with Azure Information Protection, this took things to the next level, and it enabled Microsoft 365 administrators to configure classification and protection labels and policies within the Azure portal for their Microsoft 365 users, and give those users permissions to do certain things. Just take a quick sip of water. So with Azure Information Protection, you needed some additional licensing. So this was where you had to get your hands in your pocket and either get an Enterprise Mobility and Security E3 license or an Azure Information Protection P1 license. And there are all sorts of flavors of how you can get that licensing to stand up AIP labeling and then classify and protect your documents and emails with encryption and things like content marking, and then the users are able to, within their Microsoft 365 applications, in things like Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, initially when AIP first was launched, apply those labels. And once those labels were applied to the content, only people with access to that label could consume the content, so the content was protected. So a little while afterwards, we saw things evolving, and we had the introduction of sensitivity labels, which was the next stage in the evolution, shall we say. It was kind of the same thing, but presented in a slightly different way and in a completely different portal. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is that a lot of these services that we had originally in the Azure portal were starting to crop up in the Security and Compliance Center, which you can reach by going to protection.office.com. And in there, you had a classification tab where you could go and configure your sensitivity labels and configure them to do very much the same principles as what you can do within Azure Information Protection. However, there were a few extra features in here, and we started to see things like unified labeling coming in as well, where you could unify the labeling between your Azure Information Protection labels in the Azure portal and the labels and not the label policies, but just the labels that you have in your sensitivity labels within the Security and Compliance Center. So unified labeling was the next step. Excuse me, sorry. So then next, one of the great features that also ties into information protection is cloud app security, Microsoft's cloud access security brokerage system. And this allows you to track and monitor your SaaS application usage throughout your organization. But what it also can do through the policies that are available within Cloud App Security, also known as OCAS, Office Cloud App Security, or MCAS, Microsoft Cloud App Security, because Microsoft do like to give us lots of different labels, is that you can, in the policies, when you configure what you want these policies to do and detect and alert on, you can also apply information governance rules to that Cloud App Security policy. And one of the things you can do there is apply a sensitivity label with Cloud App Security. And then finally, we have Windows Information Protection, which is a form of endpoint protection which relates to protecting essentially your devices, BYOD devices predominantly, at the application level rather than the device level. So this is for devices that you don't control in your environment. So this is what sort of makes up information protection in its current form. So how does this all come together, and what do you get with the various subscriptions? So on the left here we have information rights management, which I've already explained is included in Office 365 E3, still is to this day, and this provides protection for Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive for business content. It gives you Office 365 message encryption. It enables you to bring your own key for customer managed key provisioning lifecycle. It also gives you the ability to protect non-Microsoft Office file formats, including PTXT, PJPG, and P-file formats. Then we move on to Azure Information Protection P1 licensing SKU, which is also included in EM&S E3 and Microsoft 365 E3. This allows user-initiated document classification and consumption of sensitive documents or emails, either via the AIP Classic client or the newer Unified client for Windows. So if you're familiar with information protection and have used it within your Microsoft 365 applications, your Microsoft 365 Pro Plus, you'll have seen it in one of two different forms. There is a bar in the ribbon, and if you've got the Classic client, you will see the Protect button. If you've got the Unified client, you will see the Sensitivity button. So there's subtle differences in how that looks. And obviously there's differences in the feature sets that come between those two clients. Microsoft are pushing us more and more inexorably towards the newer Unified client. In fact, I believe if you go to the download page for the Classic client now, a customer of mine recently told me that you can no longer download that. You have to get the newer modern client now. So I think that in conjunction with the fact that doing information protection from the Azure portal is going to be deprecated in early 2021 shows us where things are going, what Microsoft has on the roadmap for this as a whole. What you can also do is you can use the RMS connector with on-premises Windows Server file shares using the file classification infrastructure, and you can complete document tracking and revocation. So there's an application that you can download and log in with your Microsoft 365 credentials. And if any content is labeled with a classification label, sensitivity label, you can use that app to track those documents and revoke access as well if you need to. Then we come on to the sort of most advanced, fully fledged version of information protection, which was up until recently licensable with Azure Information Protection P2 licensing. Now this has been taken away very, very recently. I'm not entirely sure why. I was on a Microsoft AMA in the tech community forums very recently, and I asked this question and I didn't really get an answer, but they've taken that means of licensing it as an individual SKU away. So if you want the full flavor of information protection now, you're going to have to get that with either EM&S E5 or Microsoft 365 E5. And what this allows you to do is to automate the process of classifying and consuming those documents via those clients that we mentioned there, the Classic client or the newer Unified client for Windows. Important to mention, or didn't mention for P1, but in both P1 and P2, it's also supported more recently in Mac OS as well, iOS and Android Office applications, and along with Office Online more recently too. So so this is really good. The ability to automate that classification and protection of documents is a great feature if you essentially don't trust your user base. If you want to take the decision away from them and have content protected based on the sensitive information types that are built into Microsoft 365, which you can find in the Security and Compliance Center, and these are the sort of things like financial information and medical information, all those sort of sensitive information types that we're all quite familiar with. And of course, you can make your own as well. And the other great additional feature of the P2 side of Azure Information Protection is the ability to use the Azure Information Protection Scanner. And this allows you to automatically scan for and classify existing data which is stored in on-premises locations such as file servers and SharePoint libraries. And once again, as with the automated protection, this is based on those built-in sensitive information types that are included in Microsoft 365. So how is AIP licensed? So basically, there are 4 different methods, and this slide is already, as I've already alluded to, slightly out of date with the AIP Premium P2. So we have the free version, which is included in any Azure AD account, and the features of that are that any user is able to view or read any protected content. Then we move up to AIP for Office 365, included in O365 Enterprise E3 and E5 plans, and users may apply information rights management features and apply email message encryption. Then we have AIP Premium P1, either as a standalone plan, included with Microsoft 365 Business. It was great when it was included in that licensing choice. EM&S E3 and Microsoft 365 E3, and with this, as we've already alluded to, users may manually apply label classifications to emails and documents to protect their content. And then finally, AIP Premium to P2, which is no longer a standalone plan, but you can get with an EM&S E5 and Microsoft 365 E5. Automatic labeling may be applied to emails and documents when sensitive content is detected, and additionally, you can use the AIP scanner to protect that on-premises content. So where can you get access to information protection features within Microsoft 365? Well, Microsoft do like to give us lots of different portals and URLs to get to various places that will essentially do the same thing. But today, there are really 3 portals where you would go to manage this. If you are still on the old way of using AIP from the Azure portal, and I've kind of got these in the wrong order on this slide, you would go to that second one down, you would go to portal.azure.com. And in the screenshot at the top of this slide, we can see how that looks. We can see an example of the labels in there, and that's under classifications, which hopefully you can see. And here's an example of some of the labels that you can get. So you can get things like personal, public, general, confidential, highly confidential, etc., etc. You'll notice that there are some arrows next to some of those labels in that screenshot. And what that means is that they are a top level label, and beneath them we have sub-labels. So what we might have is under confidential, we might have a sub-label called human resources or financial, for example, something that is beneath that confidential top level label, but there are multiple categories beneath it. And in that situation, you cannot apply the top level label to content there. That it is essentially basically a placeholder. You can only apply the sub label in that situation. So that is from the Azure portal, which, as I mentioned, is going to be deprecated in early February 2021, I believe the date is, but may or may not be pushed back. We shall have to wait and see. The other place that you can get it, more commonly access it from in recent times, would be the Security and Compliance Center, which is the unified admin center for all things security and compliance. And that is the second screenshot that we have here. And we can see in this admin center, if you navigate to it, if you scroll down to the classification section and drill down in there, you can see sensitivity labels within. And again, you have the same labels in there. You can probably spot in there that I have the same ones there. I have very private, I have personal, public. So, and that as a result of unified labeling being in play, where the labels are published cross portals and go both ways. The same cannot be said for policies. Policies don't get published, so that is something definitely to watch out for. But so what you do is you configure your labels the way you want them to apply the protection that you want, and then you can set label policies which are targeted at users or groups of users. They will then get these labels published to their Microsoft 365 Pro Plus apps. They'll also be able to see them on their mobile devices and within Office Online as well, and they can apply that content, or it will be auto applied depending on the label settings that have been configured. So that's 2 out of 3 areas where you can go and set those labels up. The final portal that you can go to is the separate compliance center, which separates things out. Microsoft have recently driven things more towards separate security and compliance centers, and the compliance center resides at compliance.microsoft.com, and you will find in this compliance center exactly the same features. You go into it, you go to information protection, and you can see those same labels, label policies, and auto labeling. You will find that some of the features are a little bit richer in here because Microsoft is spending a lot more time pushing things into these more dedicated centers rather than that unified one. So if I were a betting man predicting things, I would think that maybe the security and compliance center may go the distance eventually, but time will tell. We shall see. So what is the user experience when accessing these labels in the applications? I already touched on this a little bit earlier, but this is what it looks like if you're accessing and protecting content within your Microsoft 365 applications. So the top image is within Word, which we're all very, very familiar with, obviously, and you will see that there is a protect button in the ribbon there. So that is an example of the classic client for AIP, which is deployed from the Azure portal, as opposed to the more modern unified client, shall we say. And that does include the sensitivity bar, and we can see on this particular example that there is no sensitivity set for this particular document, but we do have some label options that we can apply to that content that we are working on. So we could apply a personal label to it, or a public label. I think from memory, the way I had those set up, they were pretty much the same type of label, to be honest, which didn't apply any actual encryption or protection, because the label can just be exactly that. It can just be a label. And for things that are open to everyone, like public, you don't necessarily have to apply any protection. So that is a handy thing to know. Then we have a general label there, and then we're moving on to things that are more sensitive, shall we say, confidential. And as you can see, this is an example of that being a top level label with sub-labels beneath it. So we have the option to set it for all employees or anyone not protected. So that's an example of the sensitive of the more classic client. In the Excel image, just down below, this is the newer experience. It looks pretty much the same. Very little difference, only you don't get that protect button, and it would look exactly the same in Word as well. You don't get this button anymore, but you get the sensitivity bar only, but the same principle applies, and you can apply these labels quickly and easily to your content. So what are some best practices for labeling in Microsoft Information Protection or Azure Information Protection? And these are questions that I get asked a lot by my customers, and it's a difficult one to answer because essentially as a Microsoft 365 consultant, when I'm going into my customers, quite often they will want you to do it all for them, but this is really a business decision. This is not even an internal IT decision. This is something that needs to be tied very closely with other security and compliance features when rolling out within a business or an enterprise. And it has to be done at the correct stakeholder level. The correct compliance teams and security teams need to be involved in those very much business decisions. IT departments can steer and advise, but at the end of the day, they can't say what type of information needs to be protected and to what level, what needs to be a manual protection or what needs to have the decision taken away from the users. But that notwithstanding, first and foremost, get your stakeholders involved, have the right project team involved from the get-go. Think about, if you're a consultant, as I am, think about the verticals for the market that you are working within. Think about what would be applicable in those circumstances, and take things from there. But the first step really is to diligently test your sensitivity labels and policies by deploying to a small pilot group to begin with. It's important to get that pilot group to consist of the right people, and as I mentioned there, that needs to include the stakeholders, inevitably people from IT teams. Ideally as well, you would like to include some of your more friendly, tech-friendly users in that pilot scheme, the ones who will potentially evangelize this this technology for you, because I think we've all been there as IT managers and administrators and consultants. We've been sat in the canteen and talking to people who work in other teams and say this feature is great, and you don't get a reaction. Here's the IT guy going on about geeky stuff again. But if you can get people in those other roles excited about it, then the news will travel and people will listen. By the same token, I always find it of great value as well to involve some of the more challenging users in these pilots. Think of the people who will ask the most awkward questions and challenge and say, well, this might not work very well. I don't like this, and get that out of the way in the early stages. So when you come to rolling it out to general release, it's going to be exactly where you want it to, near enough. So that's key. The second item is to keep the number of labels to a minimum where possible, at least in the first instance. Keep it simple, because getting used to these new technologies is going to be challenging for your user base. Don't give them too much to do and learn at once. Keep it very, very simple. Maybe don't have too many sub-labels to begin with. Try and keep them just at top level labels. And don't try and overcomplicate things. I did have one customer who in one of my very first information sensitivity labeling rollouts, not only was it a very complex request, it was also on a Mac OS platform not long after sensitivity labeling was made available for Mac OS. So that was very much a baptism of fire for me. But we got it working for them. But that was an example, in a sense, of how not to do it, because it overcomplicated things, because this particular customer wanted a sensitivity label for a great number of their individual external customers, and it had some challenges. We got it to where they wanted to go, but I would always say keep it simple. Thirdly, make sure that your labels and descriptions are easy to understand and do what they say. So it has to be very, very clear what the labels are. They can't be ambiguous, because your users will get confused by it. And if they're confused from day one, then that's not a good start. Definitely provide your users with training before deploying labels and label policies to them. The success of any deployment of new technology is only going to be as successful as the knowledge that you arm your user base with, and get them confident with the solution. So definitely plan for that. To begin with, I would say only force automatic classification where absolutely necessary. I think if you're going to get users on side with any sort of new technology, I think you don't want to get, unless you absolutely have to, unless compliance and internal policies and regulatory obligations dictate otherwise, go easy on them to start with, because at the end of the day, you want your users to be able to do their job. You don't want this to be seen as a blocker to them being able to carry out their roles. And if that is perceived, then you're going to have them against you from very, very early on. So think about doing that later. If you absolutely have to, would be my advice. Use built-in sensitive information types where possible. There are a huge amount of built-in sensitive information types that are contained within Microsoft 365. These can be found within the Security and Compliance Center, and contain things like medical and health information, financial information, broken down into countries from all over the world, and you can very, very easily apply these specifically when doing the auto labeling. One of the things when using information protection with the full fat clients of Microsoft 365 is to keep your Office versions 2016 or 2019 or Pro Plus, keep it up to date. Make sure that you've got all those great Windows updates, Office updates applying, so you're getting the latest features and the latest clients and all that good stuff. Ensure that users are signed into Office with their Office 365 account. This is a very important one. This particularly caught me off guard in the early days when I was doing this on the Mac platform specifically. If you're not signed into Office as that user who is being targeted by those labels and policies, then you're not going to get those labels, and you'll find that the sensitivity button or bar or however it presents in the platform that you're working on is going to be grayed out or not available, and you might do some head scratching. So remember to make sure your users are signed in with their appropriate M365 credentials. And use sensitivity labels and policies in conjunction with DLP, data loss prevention, to maximize data protection and prevent against any accidental sharing of sensitive data. What I always say to my customers when they're starting on this journey, once they've got onto the platform, they've got their Exchange online, they're in the cloud, they've got that cloud footprint. The next thing for me, well, after Teams usually, is security and compliance. That's how I think. You need to be looking at these technologies, but by the same token, not everybody has more than Office 365 E3, and AIP, MIP, whatever you want to call it, is something that you're going to have to get an additional license for to consume the great features within. That is not true of DLP. You can use that immediately with your Office 365 E3 subscriptions and so on to configure policies which will prevent the accidental sharing of sensitive data from your organization. And the really great thing about that as well is that you can set these DLP policies to be run in test mode with notifications, so you can test these out fully. But I digress. This is not about DLP. That's for another time. But they tie in quite closely. We talked a little bit earlier about Cloud App Security. Cloud App Security is a really, really great feature, which if you can afford the license for it, I encourage you highly to go and get it and use it, because it does so much in terms of alerting, and you can upload your Edge traffic log, device traffic logs into there and see all that great activity and configure policies and alerts to deal with that. But you can also, as this screenshot shows, link your Cloud App Security with Azure information protection settings as well. So what that enables you to do is automatically scan new files with Cloud App Security, which use Azure information protection classification labels and content inspection warnings. And there's also another option there for only scanning files for AIP classification labels and content inspection warnings from that particular tenant. So that is something that is a really, really great feature as well. And once you've got that enabled, in this screenshot here, once you have a Cloud App Security policy in place, for once you go down to the governance actions, you can go into OneDrive for Business, as we can see on this image here, or SharePoint Online, and then you can tick the box here to apply a classification label and select that and auto apply that using Cloud App Security. So that's a really nice tie-in. Excuse me. Then we can talk a little bit about Windows Information Protection, which also falls under the Microsoft Information Protection umbrella. And this is configurable via Intune or Endpoint Manager. I believe, actually, in talking to one of my colleagues, that you can no longer get to this from the Azure portal. I believe you now have to go to the Endpoint Manager portal to get access to this. But this is designed to keep business and personal data separate on devices. You can have Windows Information Protection with enrollment and MDM policies, mobile device management policies, which cover your company devices, ones which are going to be enrolled into Intune and are company owned and you have full control over. Or you can have WIP without enrollment and deploy MAM policies, mobile application management policies, which will protect content at the application level. So it effectively creates a sandbox. And in that example, You can prevent things like copy and paste between business and personal accounts. If one of your users has a personal account on their phone for that application and a business account on their phone, you can prevent that copy and paste between those accounts, so you can keep control of your sensitive data in that way. There is a thing such as enlightened and unenlightened apps within Windows Information Protection as well. And if you go, there's a link for this where you can find a list of third-party apps. All Microsoft native apps will by default be enlightened for WIP, but there are third-party apps which also know about WIP as well and can work with it, so and apply that same protection. So that's what we mean when we're talking about enlightened and unenlightened apps. So this protects data within the apps itself instead of managing the device itself. So, and then we have that example there at the bottom of the screen of WIP would be preventing a user from copying business data and pasting it into a personal application. So that sort of brings us up to date, if you like, in terms of the overall picture of Microsoft Information Protection and the different flavors of the features within it. But it's ever evolving and ever changing, and there have been some recent advances, and there will be much more to come. And one of the more recent advancements within is that we can now apply sensitivity labeling at a container level, as it's called, within 3 containers. And in the context of Microsoft 365 for sensitivity labeling, the 3 containers that we currently have available are Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365 groups, and SharePoint sites. And we can see on here we have a screenshot which shows what this looks like. And this is when setting up a team within Teams. You now have the option to apply a sensitivity label to that team. And if, for example, you are setting that sensitivity label to be very private and confidential and not accessible by external contacts or external parties, it's internal only. If that's going to be marked as a private label, it will take this decision away from you when setting up the team. It will mean that you have to set that up as a private team, which is a really good feature. So that's how it looks in Teams. This is how it looks within Microsoft 365 groups from the Azure portal, and we can see when setting up a new group that you can go in when setting up that group now, and you can get the drop down to set up that sensitivity label once again, as we could for Teams. And obviously, in case you don't know, Microsoft Teams and M365 groups are very closely connected to each other. And when you create a team, by default, you're getting a Microsoft 365 group on the back end. And you can, in fact, create a team based on an existing Microsoft 365 group. But that's one thing to be mindful of when you're creating teams and groups, that you're essentially, in many ways, creating some of the same things. And this is how it looks in SharePoint. When you create a new SharePoint site and you apply that sensitivity labeling to it, we can see here that it will apply this description to it at the top of the site. So we're getting private group with that very private label applied to it. So this is really in its infancy in many ways. It's been around in preview since early this year, I believe, and it's been in general availability since July. But there's more to come from this, because at the moment there is a distinct difference between protecting at the container level and protecting at the document level, in the sense that they don't relate to each other. If you have this SharePoint site here, for example, is protected at the container level, the site is protected with a label, this document here is not going to inherit that at the moment. That may or may not be something that Microsoft is working on. I would be very surprised if they're not. I think that's going to be a very, I know for a fact it's a very requested feature, but at the moment that is not something that is possible. But I would say watch this space with that. What's to come in Microsoft 365 information protection? If you want to find out what's coming, always, not just in information protection, but with all things M365, then I would suggest bookmarking the Microsoft 365 roadmap. You can also get an RSS feed for this as well. The link is there. And you can drill down and filter this roadmap to see what's in development, what's rolling out, what's been recently launched. Also, what Microsoft have abandoned. They sometimes give up on features that just haven't worked out. But this screenshot here shows that 3 upcoming advancements for information protection, 2 of which relate to government clouds. So the AIP scanner for on-premises was going to be available for government clouds. That's in development. Since I last took this screenshot, it might be even further actually. So take a look at the roadmap, see what's coming. Then we've got this one at the bottom here as well, Microsoft Information Protection API for Graph. I know we've got a lot of interest in Graph API, and that's really powerful. So it's good to see that information protection is getting those APIs there to do that sort of stuff. So absolutely brilliant. And that is the actual last slide, and we've got a bit of time still. The last slide is actually for Q&A, but what I'd like to do, just briefly, is just to follow up with just a little bit of a drive around some of the admin centers, which I happen to have open. So I will just switch to my browser and we can see some of this in action a little bit as well. Just we've had with the slides a bit of a bullet point introduction to the concepts and the and what it can all do. But with the remaining time before we get into some Q&A, let's just take a quick look at some of this in action and how it looks. So one of the first things we talked about was information rights management, which is where this all started, rights management in Office 365 E3. If you want to enable that, it has to be explicitly enabled within the SharePoint Admin Center, if not already done so. So what you have to do is go to the SharePoint Admin Center and go into settings, and it's actually a classic settings page feature. So you have to click on this classic settings page to get to it. And then scroll down to, here it is, Information Rights Management, IRM. Set IRM capabilities to SharePoint for your organization. It's off by default. If you wanted to activate that, this is just a demo tenant, so I can go ahead and do that. It doesn't do any harm to, I don't know why it's not activated by default actually. Select that, click refresh IRM settings, and wait a while and it'll be enabled. Now, how you will know that is enabled for your, oh, that's brilliant, the perils of live demoing, but how you will know that is enabled on one of your SharePoint or OneDrive document libraries is if you go, and I'll just go back here just to show you that I'm in a document library here. Boom, boom, boom. Here's a document library in one of my sites within SharePoint. And to check that, I would go into library settings from the cogwheel, and I can see there's something missing here in permissions and management. I'm looking for information rights management, and it's not there. That's because the feature is not activated, and we've just tried to activate it. However, if I switch to my other tenancy, this is a tenancy that I did in conjunction with Practical 365 recently for some articles. Just go back a level. I'm in a document library here and do the same thing. Cogwheel and library settings. We can see here we have information rights management. So that will appear in the other tenant when the feature has time to enable itself and refresh around. So this is what you can do to enable from the document library level, from the library settings, is you can click to restrict permissions on this library on download. So you can create a title for that, add a permission policy description, and then if you click on your options, this is where you get the really good stuff and what you can do with information rights management. Do not allow users to upload documents that do not support IRM. You can stop restricting access to the library at such and such a date, prevent opening documents in the browser, configure document access rights here. We can allow or disallow the ability to print the content that's protected by it, allow viewers to run script, essentially allowing them to download the document or not by writing on a copy. After the download, document access rights can be set to expire after a certain number of days. And then we have some group protection and credentials interval settings here as well. So settings for users must verify their credentials using this number of days. And then we've got some group protection default group here as well that you can enter also. So that's an example of rights management in action there. So that's how that looks. Just to give you a flavor of the, let's do a refresh. Hopefully it won't ask me to log in again. This is Azure information. No, it's gone back to, so if this is the Azure portal, and we can have a look at the legacy portal here just by searching for Azure information protection, and there it is. Just give that a few seconds to catch up. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Okay, we'll come back to that one in a moment. What we'll do is we'll take a quick look at the Security and Compliance Center, which is accessible from protection.office.com. And you need to be, to access these admin centers, you need to be obviously either a global administrator or a compliance administrator or a compliance security, compliance something else administrator. I can't remember the other one, but there's lots of different roles which you can find in the permissions. And you can define your own roles for this as well, but you have to have the right level of role access to be able to get to this. But here we have the classification section here, and we can see that we have sensitivity labels in here. So let's just take a look at some of the ones that are pre-populated, if there are any. Yeah, there are a few that are in this example tenant. So we can see that we've got a personal one. There's an order of priority for labeling. Order is important when it comes to sensitivity labeling. So the ones that you want to apply first and foremost have that as the lowest, and the top is and the least is the highest. Drop my headphone. Okay, so if we take a look at one of these labels, for example, one that I know is going to have protection on it will be confidential finance. So let's take a look and see what that is doing. So here we can see we've got a label called confidential finance. It's got a display name of the same and a description showing what the label is going to do. So this file was automatically labeled because it contains confidential data. So this is an example of a label that is going to apply automatically. We can edit that label, and we can see that we can configure a lot of things for it. We can configure the encryption settings. We can choose whether or not we want to apply encryption, assign permissions now, or let users assign permissions when they apply the label. Control the when the access to content expires, allow offline access, and then control who has permissions, specific users and groups. More recently, there's an option here actually to apply double key encryption as well to these labels, which is in preview. It's not something I've personally tried yet, but I know that's something that's been asked for quite a while. We can apply content marking to our labels as well, actually. So what we can do here is we can add a watermark to the labels that get applied to our content. So here we've got a watermark which will label that document or email with confidential financial data. You can also add headers or footers. And then here we can configure auto labeling if you have the appropriate licensing. It's important to remember. Apply automatic labeling based on what we described earlier, these sensitive information types. So you can quite easily add more in here. There's trainable classifiers which have come into this recently as well. And here you can see the sort of things that you can select from to assign to your labels and protect your content. And then you can review your settings and save your label. So then from the policies, you can then publish the labels. So we've got a general policy here, for example, we've got a confidential finance policy. You can, if you click publish labels, it will publish it. It will set up a new label policy. But this one here, for example, this policy here, we can see what that's going to do. It's going to publish a group of labels that we choose to a specific groups of users. So in this case, we're publishing only confidential finance to, in this case, all users and groups. We can include, drill down and get granular with who we want to have that, and then what the policy settings are going to be. So we can select the default label if we want to. We can leave it as none, or we can set, if we have more than one label here, which one we want to be set by default. If we want the, if we're allowing the users to override the label, which can be done, we can have this setting here, which means that the user will be required to provide a justification to remove that label or set it to a lower classification level. We have the option to require the user to apply a label to their email or documents. With that tick, they must apply a label. And then there's the option to provide a custom help page as well. Name and description of your policy, review your settings. Now, one thing that is missing in this one here is the fact that it's not got the more recent container level options for protecting Teams, SharePoint, and Microsoft 365 groups. So if we switch back to my other tenant again, we can just quickly go to the no, wrong one, protection.office.com, and we can see that we do have that option because I have enabled it. And to enable it, well, we'll come back to that in a second. I'll just show you this in action first. So if we go to sensitivity labels, and mine looks a little bit messier because I've played about and put all sorts of labels in here over the last couple of years that I've had this tenant, if it catches it with me. So if we look in my very private label, for example, and go ahead and click on edit, we can see here that we have a site and group settings here now, which we didn't have on the other tenant. So this is what we have. Once you've enabled that feature, you can configure site and group settings, which will apply to those 3 containers. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. If you set that to private, only members can access the site. When setting up a team with that label, if you select that label, it'll take that decision away for you. There can only be a private team. This one here controls whether external users can access it or not. And we've got some controls here for unmanaged devices as well. So if we switch back to the other screen here, there is a link here which we can share if need be. This is how you enable this feature for your tenant, because at the moment it is not yet enabled. You need to do it via PowerShell, connect to the security compliance PowerShell, and it's this command here to execute Azure AD label sync, and that will get it enabled for you. And it doesn't take too long to get enabled. So, Chirag, how are we doing for time? Do we need to wrap it up there and move on to some Q&A, do you think, or?
No, that's good. That's brilliant. We've got about 4 minutes. We have a question, so
okay.
We can take a look at that. So cool. I just want to say, big thanks to you, Peter, for being here. And obviously, I know you kind of a bit poorly, so really appreciate that you took the time out, and great examples as well. So
yeah, it's a pleasure.
Well done. Yeah, we have one question from Rikin Trivedi. The question is around the license. So the question is, for IRM, do you require add-on M365 license?
You do not, no, absolutely not. For IRM, that comes as part of your Office 365 enterprise subscriptions. So when you saw me enable that in the in SharePoint, in the SharePoint Admin Center, that will apply for Office 365, E3, E1, E5. It'll work just fine. You don't have to go up to that higher level subscription that you require if you're going up to the full sensitivity labeling and that sort of thing. So no.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah, so that's the only question we have. We got a couple of minutes before we kind of take a break. So we'll probably just wait a couple of minutes in case if anybody decides to post the question. But what I would like to do is obviously for our attendees to basically kind of fill out the feedback, if you like, in terms of about your session. So I've posted the link in the window, in the Q&A window, so please take a look at that. Fill out a very, very short feedback form, so it'll really help out Peter in future for this session, and he can obviously tweak and tailor. So
yes,
the link is there. No, absolutely, and I think while we do that, I'll just kind of load up my slides in case if you do get a question coming up. So I'm just going to share. Okay, hi, welcome back everyone to M365 UK user group. We're now going to go into our second session of the day, and so we have with us Laura Graham-Brown, who I've known for many years now, and over the years we've spoken at quite a lot of community events. And Laura specializes in, amongst other space, with her long career in IT, in Power Platform tech, and especially with Power BI and Power Apps. And some of you will already be familiar with her blogs and the videos, and and I learn a lot from those videos and blogs. So we're very honored to have Laura with us today, who will be talking to us about Power Apps and Power BI, and really that business application scenario where either you're developing a report and you just want a kind of a fancy front end, hopefully use Power Apps for it, or vice versa. So we'll get to see that, and kind of looking forward to it. So we have about 15 minutes, obviously, depending on the question and answers, but we have plenty of time around that. And so with that, Laura, take it away. So looking forward to it.
Hi, thanks, Chirag. Yes, it has been a long time. I was trying to work out how many years we knew each other.
Probably 10 years.
Yeah, scarily, it probably is. Wow. So, yes, let me share my screen. That's the other trick. So you see, I do IT, but I'm not very good at Teams.
No, that's fine. Even I struggle sometimes as well with Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, well, I'm really quite good at breaking it.
I think I can see, yes, I can see that. And yeah.
Let's take that window out of there. And let's pick that back up. And hey, I can see the questions as well. It's all good. Right. Okay. So Power BI in a Power App in a Power BI report in a yeah, Russian dolls. Here we go. Firstly, a little bit about me. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I started in Excel, playing around with that. That was my job, thankfully, and it's been my playground. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I started being active on Twitter. About a year ago, I started my own blog, Hatful of Data. For those of you that know the right author, yeah, I nicked the name from Hatful of Sky and Terry Pratchett. I also have a YouTube channel, which I put up all sorts of it's a complete mix. It's Power BI, lots of Power BI, some Power App stuff and some Power Automate stuff. But nowadays, mostly my job is Power BI. So let's have a look at what we're going to do today. So what's the plan? It's going to be lots of demos. Okay, I don't do PowerPoint very well either. So I do Teams, but a little bit, and I do PowerPoint a little bit, but that's it. So we're going to take a report, we're going to publish it, we're going to pin tiles to a dashboard, we're going to embed tiles into a Power App. Okay, that's our first big demo. Then we're going to do a demo where we're going to take a report and we're going to put an app inside it. And then we're going to do the other part, which is from a published app. And hey, we could use the one we published up here. We can embed that into a report. Okay, so the next slide is demo. Okay, so I haven't got lots of information slides, but what I do have is half of my demos today. The big demo that I'm doing at the beginning, I actually have done as a, let me find the right window. There we go. It's, of course, in the wrong place, in the wrong window. So let's go back down here. So I actually have done a complete blog post on my Hatful of Data site. And there's a YouTube video as well, which is walking us all the way through all of this today. Okay, so let me just nick that out of the way. Over there for a minute. So let's go with doing our demo. We're not going to start quite in Power Apps first. We're going to start in Power BI, because what I want to do is I want to put a tile in here inside my Power App that's come from Power BI. So as my slide said, we have to start in Power BI. So I've created a Power BI report here. All I have done is connect up an Excel spreadsheet, which has in it some data. Let me just click on there we go, some data. So I've got some dates, I've got a product, a color, and some quantity. That's all I've got. So we're going to create two column charts, really simple. So column chart, move down a bit, and let's put color along the axis and quantity in the values. And there we are, a really simple little chart that shows quantity and color. And we're going to do another chart. There is a reason for doing two charts. One of them breaks because I do something to it and I show you how to fix it. And we're going to do, this one is going to be product and quantity. So there we go. I've got two charts, standard little bar charts in Power BI that you can click on and they react to each other, etc. And it all behaves nicely. So let's save our report and we're going to publish it. So on the home ribbon, we're going to hit the publish button. By the way, please do ask questions, and I will try and keep track of questions, and I'll try and answer them if they fit in. So I've then got in here, I created a workspace for tonight, and we click select. So I'm publishing it up. And into Power App, you can't take directly from the report. You have to do something. You have to put pin the chart that you want onto a dashboard, and then the app can get it off the dashboard. Come on, it's a mini report. Why are you taking so long? The demo gods have got to me. Wow, it really is taking time. I'm going to assume it's Power BI taking its time. There we go. So there's my report. And I can click on the open in Power BI, or I can go directly to Power BI already. I've got here. Let me just drag that in and you can see that it's come through. So here we are in my workspace. Okay, it's literally just been, you can see the date and time there. It's just been published, and if I go and have a look, oh, weirdly it's on page 2, but never mind. There we are on page 2. I've got my two charts that I put in. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I've just realized what I have got wrong. My apologies. I'm just going to go back and change one thing and then republish it. I'm going to take that chart there. Okay, and I'm going to change something on it. So I'm going to do some formatting, and I'm going to go to the title, and I'm going to put in product sales. So I've updated the title, and I'm just going to quickly publish it again. It should publish a little quicker. Did you get that click? Yeah, you did. It remembers where I published it before, so it should be reasonably quick and easy. It's warning me about replacing data sets, but that's fine. And there we are. Let's switch across to my Power BI service. And let's just do a quick refresh. So there we are. I've got my two tiles. So what I need to do is I need to pin those onto a dashboard. Okay. So we're going to go with pinning that onto a dashboard. And I'm going to give it a dashboard name. I'm going to go for M365. And pin. And I'm then going to go onto this one here as well, and I'm going to pin that one as well. And if I get back into the into M365, you'll now see that there's a new one here, which is my dashboard. And there you are, you can see your two tiles. So that's done published my report. So now what we're going to go and do is we're going to go back into Power Apps, and we're going to insert those tiles, nice and easy. So if I go to the Insert ribbon, then come onto Charts, and then I'm going to go to Power BI tile and ask you, well, what's the workspace? So let's go for the workspace. It hasn't got it in there. My apologies. I created it before I did the workspace. My apologies. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close it. And I'm going to reopen it. Actually, no, let's be really careful. Let's be really cautious and just refresh this page. If in doubt, refresh. It's a bit the same as when IT used to tell you had to reboot your PC. Click on the three dots and click Edit. It will take longer when you're doing demos. Okay, so we're now going to go to the Insert ribbon, and I'm going to go to Charts, and I'm going to go to Power BI tile. And we're going to go down to, there it is. And it's got a dashboard. And if I look at the tiles, there is one tile. Okay, there's not two tiles. So if I click on that one, and also the tile's got a really weird name. You get a slightly formatted, slightly differently. So let me minimize some things so you can see what's going on. So it looks slightly different, as in I've got quantity and then a subheading by color. Okay, and that's kind of okay. But the other one didn't appear, so I can't put my two charts in here. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this app, so we're going to have to reload it in a second. And I'm going to go back to the Power BI service. And into my Power BI service, I'm going to click on the chart that didn't appear. Don't click on it, Laura. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to get back into the dashboard. There's three dots, so we're going to hover over it. There's three dots at the top here. And I'm going to click onto there. And I'm going to click Edit Details. Now, this took some Google searching to find. And literally, all you have to do is come in here, look at it and go, look, it's got a title. And click Apply. That's it. If I now go back to my Power Apps and close that app, you have to refresh it, and sometimes that doesn't always. So I'm just going to edit it again. Sometimes it works, but I can almost guarantee you whilst I'm doing a demo, it won't work. So now we can go and insert again a chart, and it's a Power BI tile. I'm going to go for exactly the same workspace. I really should start it with an A. And there you are, I get both of them. And I can go into product sales. Now, what you need to understand in here is these are independent tiles of each other. So clicking on, if I press play, clicking on one of those will take me to the Power BI report rather than interact with each other. Okay, so that it's been filtered, but it doesn't make any difference to the other chart. They are independent of each other, okay, in this particular instance. But you can do some filtering. It's a bit of a hack, though. It's not the most friendly thing in the world. So if I take this one here, if I want to filter it, what I need to do is I need to know the Power BI report behind it a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to show you, go back into my report here. And I've got a toys and I've got a color. And what I need to do is to make sure that I get that I understand that structure, that I'm going to filter by color. So I'm going to go for toys and color. So back into my app. Oh, let's check what colors I've got. Okay, I can see that. I think I've already got data loaded in my app anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a drop down. So let's go for input and a drop down. And if I look under my data, I've already got toys as a connection in here. So actually what I'm going to put into here is I'm going to put in distinct, which will give me the unique values of toys. Dot color. My apologies. Source is toys. Sorry, I've not been playing in Power Apps today, so it's wrong language today. There we go. Distinct choice color. So now if I go and press play, there we are. We get different colors appearing, right? So now what we're going to do is we are going to set up a variable. So when this changes, I want to change a variable, and then I'm going to use that variable in here to filter this chart. So on my drop down, we're going to add an action, and it's going to be on change. And that on change is going to be, let's do a set. And I'm going to call it BV color. Nope, sorry, BV filter. And this is going to be set up to be, okay, now this is a string that's going to go on the end of a URL. So in order to add parameters to the URL, how you do it is you have a string that starts with an ampersand, and then the name of the parameter that you're trying to fix or trying to set. So, sorry, excuse me. So I've got filter equals, and then I need to specify the data structure. So it starts with toys, and then a /, and then the name of the color. Sorry, the name of the column, which is color. And then this is an OData style filter. So in order to say equals, we're going to put an EQ in there, right? And then I'm going to put an apostrophe. Then we're going to ampersand in the color that has just been picked. Now I haven't renamed anything in this. So if you look, it's still drop down 1. So I can put into there self. You don't need to worry about naming nowadays. Self is reasonably new in the Power Apps. Self.selected text dot result. And I need to finish off that string with a quote. So we're going to put an ampersand in, double quotes, a single quote. We're going to go there. So, and then we do a close bracket to finish off the set. So in order to make sure that's worked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a label. Always a good idea to do some debugging. You can't drag it from there, Laura, you have to drag it from the plus. So let's take the text label and drag it in there. Okay, And I'm going to set the text there to be VV filter. Okay, at the moment it's blank, which kind of makes sense because I haven't changed the value yet. And when I change the value to blue, there we are. Let's make that label a little bit bigger. There you are. You can see, it's determined to be really small, isn't it? You can see what the filter is going to be set to. So if I click onto my chart here, if you go onto the data that's here, which annoyingly is called data there, but is called tile URL there. That doesn't make sense, right? And then I expand out this here. Here is the long URL code. And what we're going to do is on the end here, I'm going to put in an ampersand to concatenate your strings. VV filter. And let's hope we've got it right. That has not got right. What have I got wrong? I am just going to go and check that I have spelt color in the way that I expect to have spelt color. No, I spelt it the American way. I have been working too long on American sites. So I'm just going to go and change that code. Take out that U. Press play. Let's change the color. And there you are. I'm only getting red ones coming through. Okay, so I'm only getting the red column. But what I can also do, because I've set it up, we can come onto this chart here. Okay, and into there, I can also use exactly the same filter. I've managed to completely confuse the poor thing. Let's go back onto there, click onto data and drop it down. I can use exactly the same filter. It's going to the same report. So we can press play and I can go and pick a different color. And it takes a short while. So I always ask people, why are we doing this? If we can come up with a, if you just want to drop down and it filters, do you know what? Power BI does that beautifully. But if this is going to enhance in some way in your app, then it's useful because actually Power Apps at the end of the day, their charting abilities are a little limited and they don't have the functionality that Power BI has. So all the lovely graphics that you've got in Power BI, as long as you can make a tile out of it, you can bring it into here and use it. Okay, so all of the other kinds of plots that you can do inside Power BI are all available there. Right. Okay. So that's taken a very simple view, a very simple part, and I apologize if that was a little bit too fast for some people, but the blog post walks you through that step by step by step. Have we got any questions?
Nothing yet so far, Laura. You're doing good. Carry on.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So we've done that part. So what I'm going to do is I am going to save and publish because we'll use it later. That app. Okay. Right. Now let's go back into Power BI. There you are. I did a pre-prep. I'm just going to take these. Let's go on a brand new page. Power BI. Why are you going slowly? We'll ignore that page for a second. Right. So I'm going to do a really simple. Let's go for a couple of slices in here. So I'm going to bring in a slicer, and into that slicer, I'm going to put the product. Okay, I'm not a person that does pretty reports. There are lots of fantastic resources out there of people that do pretty reports. If you haven't come across Chris Hamill, he does a great job of making reports pretty very quickly and easily. Then we're going to go for another slicer, and I'm going to go for a color. Okay, now obviously you'd have other information and other details on your report, but you then go, now I want to add an app. So we're going to go into our app, and we're going to put into here, there's a Power App, Power Apps for Power BI. So let's click on there. And let's make it a little bit bigger. And you know, let's lose that filters pane, because I never use it in this situation. Well, I do use it, but not tonight. Okay, and it gives you a whole section. It gives you advice on how to do this. They're quite keen on you doing this. So the first thing you do is you pick some data, and then you pick that you want to use in your app, and then you can build an app. So that's the version we're going to do first. Is we're going to show how you could build an app using Power BI data. So I'm here, and what I'm going to do is, you know what, I want to bring all the data through. So I'm going to pick all the columns. Right? And then down here, it asks you, do you want to choose an app or do you want to create a new one? And here, the create purple, so we'll click that. It's always more fun to click the purple ones. And it's warning you, you're about to navigate to a horrific looking URL, but that's fine. We'll click OK. And of course, it's going to open the browser in the wrong window, the wrong screen. So let me just bring that down. And what it does is it goes away and it creates you an app, and it puts a connection into that app of your data, which means that we can then go and put that data into a gallery or something else. We can add actions, all sorts of things onto it. It's opened in a different browser to the other one.
Hi, sorry, if I may, sorry to interrupt. Just while that's loading, I have a quick question from Rose asking that, what if you want to add a all colors option as a selection inside the filter that you were demoing just 5 minutes ago? Is that possible?
Yes, so going back into, yes, that is possible. Going back into, let's let that one load, and let me just go back into, let me see if I can find the right window.
Yeah, sure. I mean, carry on, but you can always come back later. But yeah, it's just a quick question around that.
No, it's a really good question. So what I would probably do is for this drop down here, I would probably change it so that I put the list in that I'm using there, the items list, into a collection. And then I would add into my collection an all record, and then the action in here would depend. I'd either set the filter to be blank, an empty string, if it was all, and if it's not all, set it using the color.
Right, that's great. Thanks, Laura.
That's all right. Okay, I need a second. Come into here. I'm just going to convince this to open another window. This is going to work. So I'm already logged in. Just do it again, your browsers don't play ball. And one of the challenges that I'm sure some other people out here as well have is the whole different browsers are logged into different tenancies doing different things. And my problem is oh boy. Let me try. Let's try one more time and then we'll try something different. Yeah, we're not doing well there. We're not doing well there. So let's try this the other way around. Let's try this going from inside. Let's try that link one more time. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to edit the report in the Power BI service, which might behave slightly better. This normally behaves. Wow. Let's take. So right, okay, fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my third demo, and then I'm going to go and edit this actually in the service. So for my third demo, we're going to do something that slightly amuses me that you can do. I've not worked out a business reason to do it yet, but it's just to prove that you can. Okay, let's insert another power up into here. Let's just see if it'll let me. So I'm going to bring in some data into here, the color and the product. I probably don't need to bring anything in, but it needs it to, in order to connect. And then I'm going to choose an app. And I'm going to choose the app we made tonight. Now, I'm not going to click go to Power App Studio because I think it's going to sulk a little bit on that. So I'm just going to click skip on there. Now, what it's warning you here is if you give somebody access, so it's true in both ways. If you give somebody access to your app and it's got a tile from Power BI, they also need to be able to see that tile. If you're going to give them access to an app inside your report, you need to give them access to the app and to your report. Okay, just like in a Power App, if you're giving them access, if you're including data, you've got to give them access to that data. So slightly bizarrely, we have there an app. Now that app could have anything. I've used the app before now to collect commentary, okay, about my report. What you can't do easily, unless your report is a direct query report, and a direct query report does instant. It's doing instant refreshes as you go. You can't type in data here into an app, save it, and it appear in your report, unless you're using direct query. Okay, and that direct query should be a second choice really in these kind of things, because it is the impact on your Power BI service is quite big, and there are hard work reports to work with. Okay, so we've managed to put an app inside Power BI. What I'm going to do is I'm going to publish that report. And I'm going to go and see if I can do the opposite way around, which is the more interesting way around, really. And when you publish these things, it does warn you about the fact that I've got a dashboard and I've got a report that will be affected. So I'm going to close that because that was causing some issues, and I'm going to close that because that was We don't need that anymore. And let's go back into the Power BI, into here. And let's go into our report again. Okay, so there you are. It's just been republished. And it's going to take time to load your Power App in. So this is one of the good bits, so this is one of the bad bits about it all, is the fact that actually here you've got your app, okay, and it can do things. And when I come into here and I change stuff, it will work, it will react, but it takes time to load. Okay, so it's not the best option in the world. Please don't have an app replacing a perfectly good Power BI report. Right, let's see if I can now, from here, you certainly used to be able to, if I come into here and edit, some of the time this works a little bit better. So we're going to go create new. If you want to combine apps and reports together, okay, I strongly just recommend just pin them all in Teams. It's a lot better idea. So here we are. Now what it does by default, okay, what it does by default is you get a telephone, mobile phone shape app, okay, which unfortunately you can't change in size wise. But you get a Power BI integration up here. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to just quickly tweak the gallery here. I'm just going to change its layout to be 3 things. And we'll change one of those to be this item dot quantity. Just to prove we've got different records coming in, and I'm going to add in another one, and I'm going to put this item dot date, and we're going to kind of ignore the fact that it's an appallingly formatted date just due to time. Okay, yeah, that's a date, that's a date time string, and you can do things to it to make it make it into a proper date, but we're not going to do that now. We're going to file, save, and M365 embedded. And that's where you'd have to share it to make sure that it's with the right things. And then I am going to done there. So therefore I can now close this. And there we are, we've got our app. Okay, now it's connected to your this one's connected to your Power BI report. So if I click on that, it should. Wow, it's not going to play ball today, is it? It really isn't going to play ball with me today. That should have limited. You know, let's pick a different color. Let's pick white. Wow. It normally plays ball. and we should filter. Let me make sure that can't select it. Let's go to it's really not letting me unselect. Pick that one. Wow, I can't select that. Right, so I've picked that. It's got all those things in. We should be able to. And it is not filtering. My apologies, guys. I do not know why. The demo gods have got me, Chirag.
Now, I get similar issues sometimes, especially with the sharing screens and running the Teams live event. So it's a combination of a few things there.
Yeah. My apologies, guys, because what it should do, okay, and what should be happening is it should be as you filter in the report, it filters the data being fed to the app, and so therefore the app should react to the app. So what I'm going to do, so the gallery should get filtered through. I'm just going to make sure that it is all saved up in the way that I expect it to be saved up. Wow, now I've got no data. I'm going to just resize something and change something, so therefore it will want to save and publish it. And then close. Back to the report in here. We're going to do a save. Come out of here, go back into my report. So let's go for red things. Yay, there we go, it's reacting. Did you see I've now only got red things in there, and if I go for red hoops, my data in here reacts with in the app. Now, obviously a gallery is not a good suggestion because hey, we could have done that in the report. But what I have done in the past is to do send a reminder. So use that icon there to send somebody an email or send somebody a reminder, or that people can pick something here. They can type in commentary and click save, and commentary gets saved somewhere. It's what my project managers use in one of my clients a lot. Okay. So if you've got any questions, okay, my apologies, that demo wasn't as smooth as I'd have liked it to be. If you've got any questions, please do hit me up on if you have questions after this evening, because that's always the thing, is you go and try what you see as a demo and then you have hundreds of questions afterwards. I think we've all been there. I will add an extra slide into here which puts a link into the resources I've used. I've got a video on this. Shane Young has a video on this as well. He has a video on the second demo. And give me the questions, and hey, we'll make more videos if that helps. Any other questions, guys?
Just while we're waiting for the questions, Laura, I'd just like to say big thanks. And yes, absolutely, all the demos you covered. I think sometimes the internet plays up, so it could be a combination of that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a great session. I didn't even actually know with some of those color filtering in terms of the creative thinking around that would actually occur to be able to change those things dynamically. And I think it's a very neat little concept there.
Yeah, it's got. And same truth, guys. I'd love to hear people if people come up with some cool ideas of how to use these things. Please do let us know.
No, indeed. So I think attendees have posted some links in the chat window. Obviously, please feel free to ask questions. We've got a few minutes, but in the meantime, as you're doing that, we'll provide the slides and the YouTube videos by Friday, so that you can at least play back and look at some of those slides as well. But other than that, I'd just like to say big thanks to you attendees, especially in the sunny UK today, nearly 29-30 degrees centigrade. So we survived the heat, and yeah. Until next time. But I think I'm just looking through the questions now, so I don't think we got anything coming. Let me load my slides as well. No, Laura, we don't have any questions. No fast. So I think no doubt they'll probably come to your blog, or maybe perhaps a follow-on from this event. But yeah, just like to say once again, thanks, Laura, and also Peter earlier on for being with us at M365 UK. We have a session planned for next month, as I mentioned briefly earlier, which it's on the 14th of October with Joanne Klein and Leslie Crook. So looking forward to that sessions, especially with Joanne's session, which there'll be a lot of updates, especially from the Microsoft Ignite, I'm sure. So yeah, even though it'll be refreshing, it'll be still good to do. And there's the links there as well. So yeah, until then, I think please take care and hopefully see you, some of you online, perhaps at Microsoft Ignite next week. But yeah, if you have any questions or feedback around the event, then please feel free to provide that us as well over the feedback forms. But other than that, Laura, take care and goodbye from M365 UK.